All right, Bobby, NASCAR Hall of Fame, a huge honor. Were you expecting this last May when you got that phone call?
I wasn't expecting it for sure. You don't know when your time, when you could be nominated, when you're nominated and then considered into it. And I wasn't really, try not to think about it. The year before I thought about it, and then last May, I tried not to think about it. And in fact, my wife and I, we did our little bike ride together and just to kind of get away, and then boom, it happened and my phone blew up. But, you just don't know. And I didn't want to sit there and think this is, it might not happen for who knows how long, or it might not happen. So in my mind, I just put it aside, and if it happens, it happens.
When you look back over your racing career, what do you think is the defining moment? Joe was in here talking about, your first win and it taking so long to get, and then you finally nail that down, and how emotional it was. What's one moment that sticks out to you?
Well, it's a culmination of so many things, and just I mentioned the other day, I said, if it wasn't for Joe Gibbs, Jimmy Maycar, and Interstate Batteries, I wouldn't be here. Because there's nothing that happened, prior to that would have, put me in this position. But, obviously getting hooked up with Joe, and just having that team aspect, and, winning that first race was the hardest thing to do. And we'd gotten so close that year. We won that first race, and then it didn't get any easier, but we became more confident in it. And so when you think about what kind of started something was, winning that first race and the desire that we had, and the team that we had that we'd built, it was put together to do that. And winning the championship was a result of that, but that first race was definitely the one that, you checked off and said, now, Kenny Schrader says, okay, you won one, you got to win more than one. And I was like, all right, you know what I mean? So, and that we were able to do that.
So you're going in with your former owner and former teammate. We'll leave Tony over here for a second. Let's talk about Joe. Mm-hmm. What's it mean to you to go in with Joe Gibbs, a guy that helped you reach a success?
Yeah, I remember seeing Joe speak at a conference for Pontiac or somebody, GM, years before, or a couple years before that, and was just like impressed. And to go in with Joe is, obviously working with him as a team, or at his team, and everybody there, but being able to be in those either meetings together, good or bad, times that were whatever they might be, and having my 10 years that I was there, and we were able to win. But when you put it all together, just being with somebody like Joe, following him, going to watch him do things, speak at the Panther Stadium, I thought was the hugest thing I've ever seen in my life, for Billy Graham. Like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? But the things that I learned from him outside of racing, just in your heart, that you become a better person because of you're around somebody like that, is something that he taught me, that he didn't, wasn't a school book, it wasn't a playbook per se, but it was something that, when you're around Joe and the people around him, I wanted that to be, this makes sense of how you do this and how you treat people and stuff like that. So I think being around Joe, minus the racing, is just, was amazing, because, there's so many things that I reflect back on of the time that I was with him, and I'm like, man, he helped me in so many ways that it's hard to explain.
What about Tony? I'm sure being teammates with a guy like that makes it easy to look like the good kid in the house, right, over at Gibbs?
It's opposite of Tony.
Yeah.
It's opposite with Tony. No, Tony, I saw a side of Tony that probably a lot of people didn't get to see, and I think a lot of people do see it. But being his teammate for so many years, and what he can do, not just talent behind a wheel, what he can do. Driving so many different things and being so successful and winning 3 championships and watching all this, and being a fan of Tony Stewart, getting Tony on board at Joe Gibbs Racing was hard, but I was all about Tony Stewart, because of the list of people that were on the chalkboard, he's one that kept rising to the top, and so Joe got him, and I was so glad, and to be his teammate was just he was not like me, but at the same time, we both had the same desire. And again, knowing him, the backside of him, or the different side of him that people might not have seen from inside the trailer and stuff like that was awesome. I mean, he's really, I mean, he was so great for me that, I just was so glad that I got to be a part of being his teammate while I was at Gibbs.
And what's it going to mean to be able to go in with these guys? Maybe not necessarily arm in arm, but at the end of the night, you guys receive your blue jackets and your rings up there together as kind of a throwback Joe Gibbs unit.
It's so it's weird, you know what I mean, in a way. And I don't mean weird, but it's like, who'd have thought of that? I mean, how did this, how did this come about at this point in time? And that's where you think about, I mean, being thankful to come in this class with Tony and Joe and Waddell and Buddy, but the three of us together. I mean, who'd have thought this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago when we were at Joe Gibbs Racing, and when I won a championship and Tony won one, and you just, who would have put it all together, and Joe getting into a Hall of Fame for the second time. It's really special. I mean, there's no doubt that it means a lot to me, and it's just a, I don't know that, I mean, I'm glad it's like it is, because it'd been kind of odd thinking about it now if it didn't happen that way.
Well, congratulations, you're officially a Hall of Famer.
Thank you. If I make it tomorrow night.